Welcome to Mamamia Out Loud. It's what women are actually talking about on Wednesday, the 6th of August. My name is Holly Wainwright.
I'm Jessie Stevens.
And I'm Amelia Lester.
What you will see us talking about today.
Why don't women want to have babies anymore?
Plus, Brooklyn Beckham and Nicola Peltz-Beckham's vow renewal, and how their family drama now involves yachts in Saint-Tropez.
Yes, indeed. It must be terrible. Must be terrible to have to play out your family dramas on mega yachts in Saint-Tropez. But anyway, are you ready to go into the dark? 5 days in a cave is the new spiritual wellness trend. Join us. But first, Jessie Stevens.
Walking backwards is good for your health and we should all be doing it.
I've heard this before. Why?
Okay. A report by BBC journalist. Did you hear me giggling at my desk today? Because,
I did.
Yeah, this is what it was about. Okay. So the journalist named Melissa Hoggenboom has found that walking backwards can help relieve back pain, arthritis, knee issues. Some studies have said it improves memory, reaction time and problem solving. Doing so for just 10 to 15 minutes a day can increase hamstring flexibility and strengthen back muscles, which all sounds great. Why was Jessie laughing? Because I feel like the researchers aren't acknowledging that when you walk backwards, you run into people. And I kept imagining all of us going for like a 15-minute walk on our lunch break because the walking backwards is good for us around the city. And the report starts with Hoggenboom saying, have you ever given much thought to why we walk the way we do? And I'm like, yeah, it's so we can see where we're going.
Exactly. I want to get from here to there and I want to see there and I don't want to bump into 25 people on my way there.
Exactly. When we were hunters and we had to go and get our food, it's like we would have been eaten by a lion or tripped on a rock and hit our head before we got to the food. Like walking forward is really important. I just found this really full on. Do we see any other problems with walking backwards or are you guys going to adopt?
Is this kind of like when you close your eyes, it's so much harder to balance on one leg? Maybe it's that?
Yeah, I think that it activates different parts in your brain, which is definitely good. And a lot of athletes do it, like when they're warming up, you know how they run backwards?
Yes, and you see that a lot. But I'm just imagining.
Do you see that a lot?
Well, you see them on the track, like running back a bit, running forward,
footy
running
players
back,
and stuff.
running back. Like you see football players and everybody doing that. But I'm just imagining the main character energy involved to be the only person in the park who's walking backwards. Like when I go on my morning walk and I do a loop of a park or I walk along a beach, the person who's walking backwards, that's massive main character
That person
energy.
is also going to be wearing the shoes that have the toes on them. You just know it.
And a weighted vest. And I'm sorry, but walking backwards, it's antisocial. You're going to run into people. It's just might be great for your brain, but it's not how we were designed.
I have something else that the government wants you to be worried about.
Okay.
I know you're delighted to hear that. Australia's birth rate has plummeted to its lowest level in 17 years. Back in 2004, the then Treasurer Peter Costello urged Australians to have more babies. He famously said, you need to have one for mum, one for dad, and one for the country. And now new ABS stats put the birth rate really low. They put it at 1.5 children per woman. 1.5.
Wow, okay. Despite our efforts in the last 17 years, us three, we've tried to contribute and we've just not been doing enough.
It needs to be 2.1. That's what you need to have what's called replacement level to keep the population going. By the way, that doesn't include immigration, but that is what it's called, the replacement level. It hasn't been there since 2008. Now, I want to congratulate Western Australia and Tasmania. They have been doing their part.
Yeah.
So well done. Every other state, not so much. But don't worry because John Howard has entered the chat. Remember John Howard, our Prime Minister for many years?
He's got an idea.
He is urging, because there's a lot of male politicians urging people in this story. He is urging Treasurer Jen Chalmers to reintroduce the baby bonus. This was a scheme that Howard introduced back in 2004, and it gave parents an initial sum of $3,000 per child, and then that rose to $5,000 over time. And by some accounts, the scheme did work pretty well. By 2008, women were having 2 babies per woman, as opposed to the current 1.5, which we can all agree half a baby is not good. But a lot of people are pretty skeptical about the idea of reintroducing it these days. For instance, the Nationals leader, David Littleproud, he is not urging a baby bonus. He says that $3,000 would not be enough to cover the cost of living.
Yeah.
And it's true that research shows that more than half of 18 to 34-year-olds say that they're delaying starting a family because of cost of living. And if you delay having children, you likely have fewer of them. So what I wanted to talk about today is what will it take for women to do their part and have children? What these male politicians keep urging, but is the baby bonus the way to do it? Just to throw a stat at you about the insignificance of this baby bonus and how much it costs to have a child. A Choosy study from 2023 showed that the average cost of having raising a child is $12,800 a year. Now, I did the maths for you. That's $230,000 over 18 years.
It's nearly $250,000.
Which makes $3,000 look kind of not enough. Jessie, do Australian women need more help having children or raising children? Discuss.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because a lot of people then come up with ideas and say, well, if you subsidise childcare, if housing was more affordable, if parental leave was longer. There are all of these policies that people sort of agitate towards. But South Korea is the example that everyone points to, which is I believe they have the lowest birth rate of pretty much anywhere in the world.
Their birth rate is below 1.
Yeah. So it's become, and this is my theory, is that it's not just my theory. A lot of people say this. How many children you have, or if you have them at all, is incredibly contagious. So it depends on what your community has sort of normalized. If no one's having babies and you look around and go, I guess we're not having babies. But in South Korea,
children themselves are also contagious, incidentally. They often have a lot of illnesses.
They do. It's
That's
one of the many reasons it's in the no column. Yeah.
I saw something the other day, completely unverified, but I should say it on a podcast. It said something like, if you have 2 kids, then you are sick 50% of the year. Right. That was the suggestion.
Seems about right.
Yeah, and then it just goes up and up. Anyway, in South Korea, they've done all of the things. The housing market, they've tried to make that more affordable. They have subsidized fertility treatments like egg freezing and IVF. They have done the financial incentives. They've tried to promote policies that improve work-life balance. They've done all of these, even like dating things, to try and get men and women to just have the sex and have the babies. They've spent $250 billion on this problem. There was a tiny increase last year, nothing too significant, but a lot of experts say when the birth rate decreases like this, there is no getting it back up. And Sarah Wilson has said this. She's written a lot about this recently, and she says that when a population's replacement rate drops below 2, which is where Australia is right now, it apparently never returns above it. Statistically, that's what it says. So, Holly, do you think that there's anything like in incentives, or do you think that we're just...
I want to step back and understand why it's important, right? I know that might sound really basic, but I see everywhere at the minute lots of panic about declining birth rates. And there are some corners of the world that do not have declining birth rates. There's some parts of Africa that don't. There are some parts of South Asia that don't. But the Western world does, even in the Nordic countries where lots of wonderful social supports for parents. So everywhere does. And it's very hard in my mind to unpick that from basically women's lives changing so drastically in a generation. The majority of women's lives, I mean, in terms of
choice.
Generally speaking, when the female population is more educated, are working, have more options, have more choices, and they have control of their fertility, they will choose to have fewer children. And that is what we're seeing everywhere. And the reasons for that can be myriad, and some of them are very much about age, as you mentioned already, is that if you've delayed the start of having children, you're just going to have fewer children. Of course you are, right? And so I'm a bit suspicious of the pearl clutching because there are still a lot of people on the planet. The resources of the planet still aren't great at keeping up with that. And I know I'm not an expert, but I'm just like, why do we need so many people? And I know you're going to say looking after the old people. That's what you're going to say to me, isn't it?
Partially.
Is that what you're going to say?
No, I'm not that worried about that.
Are you going to say economic growth? And I'm going to be like, well,
the taxes.
That's not going
Think
so
of the
great.
taxes. Holly, I need to pull you up on something. So it is true, broadly speaking, that as countries get richer, the birth rate declines. But what I discovered reading about this is there's a big caveat to that trend, which is in those richer countries, the richer women keep having babies and the poorer women stop having babies. So we're seeing this in Australia right now. Children are becoming almost a luxury good. Everything is so expensive that if you can't afford $18,000 a year and $280,000 over the course of your lifetime, you're simply going to opt out of having children.
Of course.
And obviously there are many reasons why women don't have children or choose not to have children. And so I think one way to address what you said, because I'm sympathetic to your idea that it does feel pearl clutching and sort of scolding to say women need to have more children. But part of it is, don't we want to make sure that everyone who does want to have a child, who, by the way, will then contribute to taxes and look after old people, don't we want to make it possible for women of all socioeconomic stations to be able to make that choice?
100%, of course. And I think, there are lots of interesting conversations out there about whether or not IVF should be subsidized and all these different things. Of course, I entirely agree with that. But I think every time I read about aging populations and who's going to look after the old people, I think there are other ways to solve those problems. Aged care in particular is going to be such a massive issue in Western countries over the next few years. Why don't we invest in those industries? Why don't we? These are jobs that probably aren't going away. Healthcare jobs, they're saying, are not going away. So why don't we make those jobs higher status, better paid, better trained? We invest in those facilities and make that a more desirable thing to do.
I'm with you.
And why don't we invest in the population, if that's such a problem? We all know that immigration is a solution to that too. But you've got to grow sustainably, decentralize the population, put the infrastructure in place. It's also it's the women have babies.
To invest in the aged care and to invest in the infrastructure you're talking about, you need taxes.
Yes.
And taxes come from people who are working.
I know, but Australia
and if there aren't enough people
country.
Working, you're not going to have the taxes.
Yeah, and for sure. But right now, Australia has money. It's about choices of where you put it.
The panic that people have is, yes, who's going to look after the old people? Yes, economics. What Sarah Wilson says is civilizational collapse. She says it creates such chaos that, for example, in South Korea, just things you wouldn't expect. In South Korea, they can't find any bus drivers. So the bus routes change. And then who's doing cancer research? Yes, the looking after the old people is a big one, but there's also a lot of innovation, a lot of new ideas comes from young people coming up, and it becomes this top-heavy. It changes the politics. It changes everything. And I think that really worries people. And then I suppose the question is, can you change the birth rate? A lot of people say no. And if you can't, then what are we going to do about it?
Yes.
It's interesting that we've heard from John Howard, we've heard from Peter Costello, we've heard from Donald Trump. It does tend to be conservative politicians who want to throw a one-time check at women and say we've solved the problem, as opposed to, as Holly suggests, investing in lots of more long-term things. On the pronatalists, here's what they say in response. They say that, look, we're not concerned with this whole idea of trad wives. What we're trying to address is the missing children are the children, that's their phrase, the missing children are first children and rather than subsequent children. In other words, the reason why we don't have enough babies is because more women are saying, I'm not going to have children at all, as opposed to I'm not going to have a bigger family.
But also because they can. One of the many things that we have done over, the course of quite a short period of time, in fact, and we talk about this all the time, is normalizing whatever choice women make. If it's a choice, I entirely take on your point, Amelia, that everybody who wants to have a child should have that choice if they want to. But what we've also done in the massive shift in the way that women's lives are now is it's no longer the only option available to you. We talk about this all the time, and plenty of my friends don't have children and they still feel the societal judgment of that. But it's shifting. It's beginning to shift. Now there are more models for how women's lives can be when mother isn't their central role. And then it seems to me, and I know I'm rankling at this a bit, but it seems to me that now, just when that shift is happening, they're kind of being pushed back upon and being like, well, your advancement, if you want to call it that in inverted commas, is now going to be the reason for civilizational collapse. Maybe it's a readjustment. One of the reasons I think that maybe Gen Xers find this hard to get their head around is we have very much been swimming in a soup, as we like to swim in soups at Mamamia Out Loud, of overpopulation panic for a really long time. right?
That's what you were told. You were told there was a population boom, too many babies.
It's irresponsible to have more than 2 children. Replace yourselves and that's it. Like that is very much the cultural milieu that I grew up in, is that the planet can't handle it. We've got way too many people. The oceans are being emptied. Everything's being mined. And like it is more responsible to not have children. And so it's whiplash to suddenly being told, well, now you have to. To the baby bonus point, I got the baby bonus. I had my kids in baby bonus years.
Is that why I had them?
Definitely. $3,000 was definitely enough. And what that did do, because there was all this like eye rolling about people just buy flat screen TVs with it, it meant that I got like 10 minutes of maternity leave instead of 5 minutes of maternity leave. You know what I mean? Like I put it on my salary so that I could have a little bit more time off work, or between Brent and I, we could. It was useful. It was helpful. It did make my life a little bit easier for the time. But as you very clearly pointed out, Amelia, this is not life-changing money. This is not, and nor should it be, but this is not the kind of money that's going to make you go, definitely going to do something that is going to affect everything forever.
I think you've hit on a real sort of like problem with talking about this, is because it doesn't feel like politically aligned in any way. For instance, part of the reason why the birth rate has declined so much in the US is because there are basically no longer teenage mothers. And that was a huge problem in the US demographically in the 80s.
Yeah, women having children older.
And then there were big social reforms that enabled younger women to have, for instance, better access to contraception, better educational opportunities. And then they basically stopped having children as teenagers. They stopped having children when they were children themselves. Now, you could say that's a great thing, and it is. But on the other side, it's part of why we're seeing this demographic decline.
I also think on the baby bonus, I looked into the stats about whether or not it worked, because demographers are still, the jury's still out on whether it worked, because there was an uptick. The next year there definitely was. And a lot of people suggested that was because maybe if you were going to have a baby anyway, you had the baby earlier. There was an incentive. It created a context in which there was positive social messaging around having more babies. So it could kind of give it a little boost.
But other demographers say that was always going to happen because of the demographic at the time happened to be that a lot of women of childbearing age were coming into that. But people also say that, and we have talked about this quite often, is what it did do is culturally spread a really positive message about children and babies. And
that it's good to have kids.
And to what I was just saying about how we had kind of been internalizing this idea that it was bad, and also that a kind of welcoming society to children.
The thing that I suppose worries me culturally about some, and this has been written about and researchers are looking at it, is a kind of a fear of dystopia that means that a lot of young people are going, I don't want to have children in this climate, right? And I think that having kids is a vote for hope. It is a way of going, I believe that the future is good. And that is incredibly depressing that you would have, and I completely also understandable that people might say, I don't want to bring a child into this world. That's also quite new. It's also interesting to me that we only ever talk about women in this context, as though men have no part or no say or no perspective or no opinion on how many kids
they have a lot of opinions about it.
They definitely do. But even within a relationship, it is not like the woman is the only one calling the shots about if you have kids, how many kids you have. I know they carry the baby, but it is a conversation that is focused entirely on incentivizing women and kind of getting women in trouble and scolding them about the birth rate.
And also only, as far as I can see, male politicians introducing the baby bonus idea.
Yeah, so true.
Could you be in a completely dark room with no sound, no distractions, no books, definitely no phone, no music, no TV, obviously, no nothing, for between 3 to 5 days? Do you think you could do it?
I wouldn't come out sane, I'll tell you that.
Do you think you could do it?
So I once did something a little bit like this.
Mm-hmm.
I had a head injury. A screen door fell on me, and I had to go into what is called cognitive rest.
Oh, that sounds horrible.
Which is where you are not permitted to use your brain, which means no phones for sure, because it's too much brain.
How was it?
You're not allowed to use your brain.
So much deep thinking about my life, about the world. I mean, nothing changed as a result of it, but it was a period of really deep thinking for me.
Well, that is what is going on, because dark retreats is a new, well, they're not new. They're actually ancient, right? But dark retreats are now very hot in a certain sense, like literally. Not always. Sometimes they're cold. They're very trendy, I guess, popular.
Terrified.
Yeah.
Terrified of the dark. I can't even sit in the dark.
Tell you how they work, right? So I've been reading about these lately because they're kind of hot with like the tech bro crowd and the real self-helpy, longevity-seeking male podcaster crowd. But then this week it popped up in a newsletter that I get from Liz Gilbert. I subscribe to her Substack, and I've been particularly Liz-focused lately because I'm going to interview her soon. And this week, the one that she sent out said, I've just come out of 5 days in absolute isolation on a dark retreat. And she put a link to the place that she'd gone to. Maybe it was SponCon, I don't know. But anyway, and so I went and looked. And the way that it works is, so it's like a sort of, this is in America, but they do exist in other places. There is one in Australia. It's like a cabin up in the woods built into a sort of,
it's like a cave.
Yeah. But it's quite nice. It's got like a bed and it's got a flushing toilet and it's got all the things. And you go up there for, say, a week. And the first day you're like learning about what's about to happen to you. And then you're being kind of like settled in, and they say, wind down a bit. And then they put you in the cabin. And just after sunset, they turn off all the lights. So there's like, this is dark now. And as they say, you're going into the dark. Now, you can choose whether you want that to be for a day, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days for the real hardcore. You get 3 meals a day sort of delivered to you, organic meals sort of delivered. Actually, they only get delivered once, so that they only interrupt you once, but they put them under the door or whatever. They've got a hatch or whatever. And otherwise, you are just left alone. And they check on you once a day just to make sure you're not
spiraling.
Yeah. But again, they don't interrupt your darkness. And this goes on for as long as you want it to go on for. And then when you come out, and this is what you'll see on social media about dark retreats, you often film people taking off eye masks to see light again for the first time. Now, Liz's one in her newsletter, she put one of these videos in because you can't make a lot of content when you're in a dark room with no phone.
So nervous, man. That is way brighter than I thought it'd be. Oh my god. It's so funny when you find something that you didn't really realize was lost. It makes you wonder, like, how many other things are like that, you know? Am I doing that with love? I think I have love, you know? Before coming in here, I would have said I definitely know love. But now I'm wondering if it's gotten packed on with all these other things I've forgotten. Just what it's like just to, like, just beam love.
This reminds me of when I turned my phone grayscale for 3 days in 2019, and then when I turned it back onto full color again.
Did you start crying?
That's the sound of what I did.
You know how you said when you were in forced cognitive rest, a lot of deep thinking. That guy's just done a lot of deep thinking. I'm just going to tell you what Liz Gilbert said about the experience, and then we shall unpack what we think this is all about. So she wrote in her newsletter that when she heard about it, she had like a full body yes. Like she was like, that's something I know I want to do. So she writes, so I signed up for the experience, and I will admit there were times last week sitting in the inky, unmovable darkness and silence for hour after hour when I said to my body, whose dumb idea was this? I mean, it's summer. I could be at the beach. I could be floating in a pool with my friends. I could be reading a book in a hammock with a nice cold beverage. But no, because of my loudmouth, full body response of yes, instead of doing normal things last week, I spent 100 hours in a cave with no light, alone with the terrorist of my brain. But here's the thing. My body knew I needed this. My body knew that something was going to happen in that dark that I needed. A treasure would be found in that difficult experience. And so it was. What's our reaction?
Is this rich people camping?
camping is fun.
But how is this different? I mean, what do you think?
There are no sausages around the campfire.
The food's organic,
there's
okay.
no gin. There's no
Did she mention was she allowed to take in things like, for instance, alcohol or anything like that?
Organic meals
Books
only.
okay?
No, because it's pitch black.
Even during the light?
It's pitch black. This is the
whole
point
time.
of it. You go into
I
the
did
dark.
not get that.
No.
Okay.
You
I
go,
thought you could enjoy daylight.
No, God, no. You go into the dark and then you are in dark for, as Liz Gilbert was, 100 hours. I find it really interesting why people how these things, because, to be clear, when you go to the site and learn about this, they'll tell you that this is an ancient practice that people have gone into retreat for years and and they have lots of stats about the dark and everything. But it's really interesting what sort of edgy, extreme wellness, spiritual things pop up at different times.
And how they do seem to be getting more and more extreme. So silent retreats have been a big deal for a long time. And of course, as often happens, is that's a practice that Tibetan monks have for a very long time practiced silence. A lot of religious people have. And the dark caves is a Tibetan monk thing. So they described it. It's an advanced practice. It's not something you do in your first year of being a monk. You've got to know how to meditate and get back in touch with yourself. And they describe it as a return to the womb. It's almost like confronting death because it's just blackness, which sounds horrific to me. But what I found interesting in what Elizabeth Gilbert said is that she said, it turns out when you take everything else away, love is the only thing left in the room. And that's what that guy said too, that we just listened to. And I never understood what they meant by love. It felt really vague. But I was listening to this monk recently. I think he was interviewed on Ezra Klein. His name is Mark Epstein. And he was saying that when they talk about love, especially at the end of a silent retreat, people will go, I felt love. And you know how when you try and meditate, you get the chatter? And then you start, as we all do, we judge our thoughts and we kind of are in conversation with our thoughts and we say, that's a stupid thought. Why am I stewing on this one? Why does this memory keep coming back? Apparently, if you sit with those thoughts for long enough, he described it as being like the mother who has unconditional love for a toddler, and the toddler is yelling and throwing things and running, their limbs are going crazy. And the mother just stands there and observes, and their love is never it never falters because that's unconditional. And
although that's why she needs to go into a dark retreat every now and again.
Exactly. And I was like, her love never falters, but does she just stand there passively? Does she? Or does sometimes she start also throwing her arms around? But I quite liked that idea that people say they don't leave with a greater understanding of themselves. They leave having abandoned the self and realizing there's nothing there.
Okay. I feel like there's an element here of these rich people trying to outdo themselves with these wellness rituals. Basically, it's almost boasting at this point. So apparently there's one Guatemalan retreat where you can also be deprived of light and sensory distractions for $3,000 for 4 nights. So I'm sure that the Tibetan monks were not charging each other $3,000 for 4 nights of a silent retreat.
They were going into actual caves.
This is about outdoing each other and basically seeing, as Holly said, how extreme are these wellness rituals going to get?
And I reckon it is about efficient wellness. So you hear about these people who have, I guess especially in the US, where even your annual leave is really short, right? Let's say you're a high flyer. You've got a really intense job. You're on 24/7. When you have a break, it isn't enough to lay on a beach. You need to fully restore as efficiently as possible in 3 nights and 4 days. And what do you need to do that? Maybe lay in a dark cave.
It's to bring up another phone analogy, like turning your phone to airplane mode to get it to charge more quickly. This is basically turning yourself to airplane mode.
Yes, but I agree as well that it's about trends, because I was thinking float tanks were everywhere 5 minutes ago and I just thought, where did they go? Because that, I suppose, is an hour-long version of this where you laid in the dark and kind of meditated or whatever. But it does feel like these pop up and then disappear. And it does feel a bit like appropriating the Tibetan monks who have been doing it better than us for a long time.
It's interesting because the other bit, the cynical bit of me is like, what an excellent business idea, because it's like a hotel, but you don't have to do anything. Like,
and you don't have to pay for electricity.
So they pay you. You know, some of these ones are about $900 a night. So you go for however long that you go for. And yes, you have to provide food, but that's all. The guests are very quiet. They're all in their cabins.
So no parties,
no
parties,
no drama, no activities needed, no snorkeling trips. I don't know, like, it's funny, there's a part of me that's very attracted to this stuff. Like, I like to think maybe when I'm not working anymore and clearly I've sold a book to Hollywood or something and I'm rolling in it, then like I would go and do all this stuff because I'm fascinated by it. But I actually don't think that my mind could do it. Like,
I don't want to spend time with her. I'm like, I get enough of her and I don't want to spend a holiday in my own head. I think she's not good company.
I also worry about insects.
Oh, so true.
You wouldn't be able to see them as they're creeping up on you. That's true, rodents. There might be rodents in there. I can't vouch for the veracity of this information. And that's why it's scurrilous. But word on the celebrity street, I wonder where Celebrity Street is, Calabasas perhaps, is that Brooklyn Beckham and his wife Nicola Peltz-Beckham just renewed their vows, possibly in the Hamptons in New York City. And no, she didn't wear a dress designed by her mother-in-law this time. And no, in fact, the other Beckhams were not invited because, as we know, the family feud is still going.
I kept reading that it was very private.
Very private.
Was
very
the wedding planner for this one sued or not?
Not yet, but who knows, there's time. In telling wording from Celebrity Diary, People magazine, the couple apparently wanted to do this to create new memories. Maybe ones that didn't involve
Victoria Beckham specifically.
Beckham's parents. And meanwhile, as this is going on, and this is speculation, but what we do know, because Instagram does not lie, is that all sides of the Beckham family recently nearly banged into each other on some very fancy yachts. Amelia, bring us some yacht gossip.
Thanks,
please.
Holly. Yeah, as yacht correspondent, I'm happy to send this dispatch direct from Monaco. Actually can. So I feel so sorry for David and Victoria Beckham.
Bless them.
Let me tell you what happened. David Beckham is riding high. He got a knighthood this year. Everyone loved the Netflix documentary recently. I think they were feeling really good about life, David and Victoria. So in 2022, they purchased their own yacht. That is a sign you've made it, isn't it?
Hell yes.
That is a sign you've made it. As they say, if you want to light money on fire, buy a yacht. It is 130 feet long. That's 40 meters. It costs 32 million Australian dollars, and it's called Seven, which is in reference to David Beckham's football number, I am told. It also has a spa bath as well, which is nice because I bet Victoria loves a spa of an evening.
That's lovely.
It sounds really nice, right? Yeah, here's the problem. Nicola Peltz's father also owns a yacht, and it's so much better. It's 175 million Aussie dollars. It's just bigger. It has an elevator. It has a beauty salon. It has underwater lights, and it can house 12 guests in 9 cabins. So it's just a sort of better yacht, like clearly a better yacht. I want you to picture how ridiculous the Beckham's yacht looks in comparison to the Peltz's yacht.
There's always someone richer than you, right?
It looks like a little toy Fisher-Price yacht. And they're
Like a little speedboat.
Yeah, they're sailing around at the same time. And David and Victoria are like beaming with pride in the photos they posted on Instagram from this yacht because, again, it's kind of a big deal. I'd be very proud if I was able to charter a yacht. And then you've just got Nicola and Brooklyn posting from the mega yacht.
Because what you do when you're in that corner of the world, I was there last year, is that you go, imagine being on that boat. And you say it from the port because you're personally not on a boat. And you can't even afford an ice cream, but you're looking around going, imagine being on that boat. That's that's David and Victoria sitting there being like, wow, imagine being on that one. And Brookie's like, F you, mum and dad.
Why do fancy people like yachts so much? Like, if I had all the money in the world, I don't think that's what I'd do with it. Anyway, that's my little sidebar.
I need to add.
But what I want to know is this, right? There are lots of places to take your fancy yachts in Europe at this time of year. You can't move for them. The billionaires on their bloody yachts, right? Isn't it a bit weird that they all end up in Saint-Tropez at exactly the same time? And is that because, do you think that that David and Victoria were like hoping that they could trail the big yacht with their little yacht and that maybe they'd bump into each other and maybe there could be a reunion.
I assumed it was the exact opposite. Look, everything we know about the Peltzes, please don't sue me, Peltzes, is that they sue everyone, including the wedding planner for Nicola's wedding. Peltz himself seems kind of unpleasant. The Beckhams, look, I've watched the Netflix documentary. They look lovely. I'm sort of Team Beckham here. I think they planned this. I bet they booked this like 12 months ago. They've been counting down the days, and I just have to believe that Brooklyn and Nicola were the ones who showed up to sort of one-up them, don't you think?
I have a holiday hack for free. This is my holiday hack. Share a yacht. Like it would have been so much more cheap.
I mean, there are 12 cabins on the Peltzes
they're not
yacht.
talking to each
It's
other.
like this is what happens when families fall apart is that we end up paying for our own yachts.
It's very sad. I have one other piece of evidence that Nicola and Brooklyn engineered it this way. They had lunch while they were sailing around the south of France in Cannes with Elton John.
Nicola and Brooklyn did.
Nicola and Brooklyn.
I thought that David and Elton were mates.
Elton has been a friend of the Beckhams for years,
because
right?
they would talk about the knighthood. They have those things in common.
What is clear is that Nicola and Brooklyn got Elton in the family breakup. And they went out for lunch.
At the vow renewal.
They ordered lobster linguine. It did cost 340 Aussie dollars each. Elton paid though, which is nice. Elton paid. And then Nicola posted on Instagram a picture of herself naked in a bathtub on her family's yacht to thank Elton for the lunch. Now, I don't think Elton's that way inclined.
I did see that picture. Look, I do understand why fancy people like lobster linguine. I would like that too.
No, but do they de-shell the lobster? Because I'm no good
They
at that.
definitely would.
Nicola's a billionaire. She doesn't need people paying for a linguine. I'm puffer fishing and I need to get this off my chest.
Yes, I love it when you puffer fish.
Yeah. So it is about the App-ification of everything. There was a great Substack article by Jill Filipovich about this, and I nodded at every word. How many times have you bought a product only to learn that in order to use it, you have to download an app? How many times have you sat down to order food? Suddenly there's a QR code. You go, that's fine because I downloaded an app last time. No. You need a new app to get your sandwich. You want to book an exercise class? You want to use your baby monitor? You want to transfer money, join a loyalty program, book a doctor's appointment. Your supermarket has an app. Your phone service has an app. Your health insurance. God damn it, we have an app. It's a great app, but that's not the point. The point is I audibly moan every single time I am told I must download an app. It is annoying. I have too many. Half of them are now redundant. And once I get...
And they all have a login, of course.
They all have a login. And then I get on that app and you want my email address. I have to make up a new password.
Yeah, and who remembers those?
Why do you need my email address when I just want to buy a glass of wine? Like, how is that any of your business? We have reached peak app and I am rioting. Are you guys equally as irritated?
It's appy hour, isn't it? I'm so sorry. So sorry. No, I really relate to this. And the problem with apps is that you increasingly need them when you want to carve time away from your phone. And yet you need the app to carve time away from your phone. Let me give you an example. My child, I gave him a toy dinosaur. It literally had an app where you could enhance play on the app. It's like, no, I'm trying to get him away from Minecraft to the toy dinosaur. Another example, wanted to whiten my teeth, drink too much coffee, maybe a bit too much red wine. Had to download an app.
What did the app do?
And I was like, well, is it going to tell me interesting things about my teeth? No, it told me nothing interesting about my teeth. It merely enabled me to use the teeth whitening device.
I've got apps to get into apps. That's really drives me crazy when you have to download an app to give you the security thing to get into the other app. I counted the apps on my phone. I've got 118. How many do you think you've got? So I've got 118 apps on my phone and I think they're like cookery books used to be. You know how people always say that your average person has a few cookery books but don't use any of them?
Yeah.
Or they say, if you're a proper cook, you've got lots and you use two. Apps are like that, right? I've got 117 apps living on my phone, all mining my data, spying on me wherever I go, telling each other what I'm up to, having a little gossip. And I probably use 3 of them.
I'm the same. I reckon I would have about that many apps. The average Australian, I think, has 80 to 90.
Oh, I'm overperforming. Top of the leaderboard.
Overperforming. I think that's because my mum has 2 because she doesn't know how to upload them, download them from because she has an Android. I do not know how to get an app.
I don't know how that works.
There are some hilarious apps. There is one called Is It Dark Outside? Guess what it does?
Liz Gilbert needs that one.
You need that if you're in the cave.
And my dad, I don't know what it's called, but he downloaded an app not so long ago that applauds him every time he makes a joke.
What? Oh, Brent would love
Yeah,
that.
tell Brent about it. So he just goes like this and it applauds and we're just like, who told Dad about
There
that?
is an Australian Museum app, shout out, which you should download around Christmas time, which will tell you what species of Christmas beetle you are seeing in your part of Australia.
See, that's actually kind of fun.
I have some of those ones that you can point at a plant and it tells you what plant it is. That's kind of helpful. But then sometimes you need another app to tell you what to do about the plant. Like it's a lot. It's a lot. I'm with you. Excellent pufferfish.
We have reached peak app. I just think let's just all hold hands and go, we're not downloading another one. We shan't.
Out Louders, that is all we have time for on this Wednesday. Thank you all for being with us here this week, and to our fabulous team who help us put this show together. We're going to be back in your ears tomorrow, of course.
And if you are looking for something else to listen to, on yesterday's episode, we unpacked the Logies, which were on Sunday night. They went till 4 a.m, so you may have missed some of it. Well, don't worry. Myself, Em Vernon, you, Holly Wainwright, sat down, talked about Sam Pang's hilarious monologue. We had to talk about Magda Zabansky. That is all there. Hamish. There is a link in our show notes as always. Bye.
Bye.